Play the Game is a 2009 film written and directed by Marc Fienberg, and we have a cast including Paul Campbell as David, Andy Griffith as Grandpa Joe. We also have Doris Roberts and Marla Sokoloff, and I was really looking forward to this because I really like a lot of the cast. I love Doris Roberts. The premise sounded really interesting, but to be honest, I found it quite boring. Some of the characters are really likeable, and I really enjoyed their journey, and occasionally there was a little bit of comedy, a little line here and there that made me laugh, but in general I just thought it was very slow and kind of stale. David gives his grandfather some dating advice, and he starts to hit on these women in his community, and the older women, of course, and yeah, that was quite fun. I enjoyed it. I love the idea of really championing dating later in life, and that you're never too old for love, and you're never too old to meet somebody new either, as I know there's this kind of stigma of once you get to a certain age you shouldn't be dating, and to have a boyfriend at a certain age is a bizarre concept. But why should it be? Who says there's a cut-off age for love? And it's really nice to see him, well, I guess as the title suggests, playing the game, trying to date these women, and that part of it I liked it as a concept, but I didn't really care for the execution. I found it to be quite slow. There were, as I said, times when it was a little funny, a little amusing here and there, but in general, it didn't really live up to my expectation. Meanwhile, David is also trying to find luck in love, and maybe his moves are not the best, and maybe he can learn a thing or two from Grandpa Joe. And on the one hand, I'm going to contradict myself, but on the one hand, the two parts of the story were pretty evenly weighted. I think we got to focus on David's love life and Grandpa Joe's love life pretty evenly. And on the one hand, that's a credit to the film. It was well balanced. But on the other hand, I found David's part of the story to be mostly very, very dull. At least with Grandpa Joe's, sometimes the actual activities were dull, but the characters were really likable. But with David's part of the story, I just found it to be not interesting in the slightest. So on the one hand, while I give the film credit for having a pretty good balance between the two stories, and maybe they're trying to show contrasts and similarities and things, I also don't think it should have been the case. I think it should have been solely, or at least very, very mostly, about Grandpa Joe, and followed his story. Maybe they could have developed more things there. We could have gotten more comedy out of that if we spent more time with his character. Whereas the story with David, whenever we were focusing on David, I didn't care for it. I didn't like it. It's not that I didn't like the character. He's absolutely fine. I have no problems with David as a person. The character's not badly written. Just very boring. For me, the main attraction was Grandpa Joe and the various women he tries to romance. And whenever I did find something funny, it was, I want to say, exclusively revolving around Grandpa Joe. I don't think I found anything David said to be that interesting. So, on the one hand, yes, credit for having a bit more balance, but at the same time, I don't think that was the right decision. I think it should have just been about Grandpa Joe, maybe with a tiny bit from David. So, it had potential. It could have been significantly better. Maybe that's based on personal preference. If you watch this film and you absolutely love it and you actually think David's character is really interesting and you really liked seeing the contrasts between the way David behaved and the way Grandpa Joe behaved and the responses and maybe some similar responses from different characters, then I can understand that, but I still don't agree with it. So I didn't love it. It had a lot of potential. It could have been brilliant. I'd say it was mediocre at best, but there were a couple of pretty okay moments, almost exclusively with Grandpa Joe. Andy Griffith gave a really great performance. Not that anybody else didn't give a good performance, but he was definitely the shining star with this one. Do I recommend it? Yes, I guess so. I wouldn't say stop what you're doing, rush out to rent it or whatever. I watched it on Amazon Prime, so if you're in the UK at least, it is currently on Prime. And, well, if you've got Prime, you're not paying any extra for it. Give it a go. You might enjoy it. If not, maybe put it on your to-watch list. It's not the best, but I guess there are some okay moments. And in general, I'm happy enough to recommend Play the Game.